Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we completed Electronics 1 production out here on Silicon Ridge and exported it to St. Charles. So today, we're pushing onwards to do the exact same thing with Electronics 2. We'll be able to leverage a lot of the same infrastructure that we already set up during our Electronics 1 phase, so it should be a breeze, right? Let's find out. Alright, so today's to-dos, organized as usual by island. So on Silicon Ridge, Electronics 2, of course, is our headliner. That means we're going to need to set up a bunch of glass, and we are actually going to export that to St. Charles. More on that in a bit. The other big piece that we'll need to set up that we haven't done yet out here is Silica, which is this module. That, of course, makes the silicon poly that will be put into Electronics 2 at that last manufacturing stage, which is the other big chunk of work that we'll need to do, not just the actual final end step of Electronics 2 production, but this PCB that we'll have to make first as an input. So we'll talk about these modules in more detail when we get to building them, but we'll have to do each of those chunks. In addition, we'll have to set up, just as we did for Electronics 1, our Electronics 2 export. We've got it blueprinted here already, but we'll have to set up a drop-off station on St. Charles when we're ready to do that. Once we've got all that in motion, that means that this factory, which we've already said, well, we don't really need your Electronics 1 anymore, please just redirect it all into Electronics 2 production. This factory no longer really needs to exist here, and so we're going to repurpose it. We'll talk about it in a little bit more detail when we get to it, but the short answer is basically we need something to process our recycled copper scrap, and so we're going to trim this back to basically just produce whatever amount of copper we need to recycle and turn it into Electronics 1, because we will consume that in high enough volume out here. So that'll be our higher priority source, but our higher volume source, of course, will continue to be the import from Silicon Ridge. In addition to that, in this sort of ongoing, continuously evaluating pop growth support category of to-dos, we, of course, are growing our population very quickly in order to build this massive factory, so we continue to need to evaluate all of the different things that we are producing for our citizens. Last time we managed to kick the can down the road on farming. I do think we're going to go ahead and expand here, even if we could get away without doing it. I'm over here burning 3 Unity constantly, essentially, in order to avoid building more or less just like 1, maybe 2 more farms, and that would even out. So let's just go ahead and take care of that. I'd rather have the Unity. Speaking of Unity, the other thing that we'll be able to do now that we have Electronics 2 in high enough supply is household appliances. Household appliances are another category of good that we simply have not provided at all yet to our citizens because they require a decent chunk of Electronics 2. But we have that now, so we're going to do that. Out on Ela Trace, there's not a huge amount that we really need to do in terms of its sort of basic raw material extraction, which is what we are mostly focused on out here. But what I've decided is, well, we need to get some mainframes up and running to show off how compute works, but also just start upgrading to our assembly 4s in a few key places, and that requires compute. And we'll talk about that more when we get into it. But mainframes are the sort of thing that you can build anywhere, wherever space is least valuable is basically what the more or less optimal answer is, so to speak. And we have a whole bunch of awkward space out here. Maybe we'll just build them out here. We're gonna delete them when we upgrade to data centers anyway, so I figure why not? Seems reasonable. So that's everything. And I think the first thing to do then is to start out on Silicon Ridge and talk through our layout for those various modules. So then let's talk quickly through the various modules that we'll need to spin up out here in order to get Electronics 2 up and running. The good news is we know most of these already, and we don't really have to talk too much about crazy changes in scale because we don't have to scale it up nearly as much as we did copper. So starting with glass. Now glass we're only going to make from primary glass mix out here, same as we decided for the copper setup. We are not going to spin our recycling out here and deal with all the prioritization there. We'll probably just keep this bit of glass production out here on recycled only, same as we're going to do with the copper scrap. So we're going to need to make a high volume of glass mix, essentially. And as we're familiar with, that's mostly sand, but also a bit of limestone and salt, plus a splash of acid. Of course, we've already sourced all of these materials in recent episodes. Sand, we know, comes directly from the mine here, as does limestone. And we set up salt import last time out here, which is coming in from our new salt flats build out on Île Trace, and is already hooked up to our network because we are using it out here for the production of brine into chlorine into plastic. So we're already set up there. That's a nice and easy one for us to bring in all of these loose goods. The only other thought we have to figure out there is acid. And similarly, we can leverage what we set up before and simply extend this acid pipeline, which branches off here. Mostly what we're using it for is going to be the last stage of the copper production factory here, but we're going to continue this pipeline like we do with the water pipeline because acid is just something we need a lot of different places here. Eventually we'll also connect it out here to our nuclear setup, but in the shorter term, yeah, of course, we are going to bring it over here and connect up right in this space to our two mixers for the production of that primary glass. So same as with copper, we're going to go blast furnace 2s and scrub the exhaust rather than spend a ton of electricity. We, and maybe that's a good transition into the other module, don't have that choice when it comes to molten silicon. So actually, let me come back to that in a moment because I do want to finish one other thought on glass. Of course, everything comes out here, goes through our glassmaker 2s, and then gets exported. And this, as usual, is going to be our little shuttle export. The only other bit of nuance that's out here is a little bit of fun look ahead, is there's one other place you can use molten glass in the game that is not just turning it directly into glass, and that is, when we unlock it, part of the nuclear waste reprocessing cycles that you can use to recycle waste and create more advanced fuels. Checking it out here, okay, we're just over a quarter full, so that's good to know. We've got plenty of our depleted uranium stockpile building up. So these are things that we'll be able to recycle, and in order to do that, you need some molten glass. And it's kind of a pain to set up a very small amount of molten glass in your reprocessing facility, in my opinion, because you end up having to set up essentially like either a whole arc furnace 2 and everything that goes into that, or a blast furnace 2 and everything that goes into that. But finally, we now have an alternative, which is kind of neat, which is that you can, via train, ship around molten product. And I've been looking for an excuse to do this anyway, because the molten cars look pretty sweet, but I just haven't seen too much of a use case for it when it's like, okay, from your copper step to your metal caster step, right? Like this is just like, you might as well just run the channels. But here we can just siphon off a little bit of our molten glass and then send it out to the eventual reprocessing module that we'll do out here. So we won't build it today, but I did want to show off that it is very much part of the plan, and I'm kind of excited for it. All right, so then making the transition into the silicon step. So again, we've made this before too. We've only made it with arc furnace 1s technically for our solar cell module out there in our copper factory, but arc furnace 2s, it's just a step up from that. You do have to add a water recycling setup that you don't have to do at the arc furnace 1 level, right? So this is the arc furnace 1 recipe, but if you upgrade it to arc furnace 2, same recipe requires this water steam low loop. And I think same as with our philosophy on exhaust scrubbing, we're just gonna turn this into a 3/4 by volume water recycling loop immediately without bothering on the potential to use this in sort of a power turbine. It's just not quite worth it out here, in my opinion. And then as a reminder, the molten silicon, of course, just passes through the silicon reactor with a bit of hydrogen, which we are going to have to bring in, and turns into silica poly. So hydrogen we'll import here. This is, I think, primarily going to come from this import for now, but We also, already are going to have to start clearing hydrogen out of this station, because if it does fill up, that backs up our entire refinery. The output of the silicon poly, along with the glass and the refinery's plastic, not to mention the copper we already set up, and the electronics 1 that we set up last episode. Those are our 5 inputs here to the manufacturing stage that will finally give us electronics 2 as an output. So we need half as many assemblies making PCBs as we do electronics 2. That's our ratio. Each one of these turns out 12. Each one of these takes 6. So that's basically the very straightforward setup out here. It's all of our different inputs connected to all of our different manufacturers. Not too much more to explain out here. And then we'll export it. Although I suppose this should say electronics 2 rather than electronics 1. But that's it. From there, same trains bring it out to the export station, and we set up an import station out on St. Charles. So that's the overall layout here. I have a feeling we're going to have to scale up some of the supporting stuff, but none of it will be new. I'm thinking, are we potentially going to have to increase our copper production? That's probably the biggest one, because the electronics 1 is definitely going to, it's a huge input by volume into our electronics 2. So I think that and this are the 2 areas where I think we might end up reinforcing, but everything else should be pretty straightforward, and I don't think we'll build the entirety of either of these modules right away either. So maybe we should just go ahead and start building some stuff. All right, jumping ahead, I have unpaused the infrastructure that we need for all of this, and then half of the total throughput. So a couple things just to call out real quick since I gave the overview. I have connected up the acid pipeline, which is now going to run all the way along here. That will feed into our sand mix. I've also connected up the exhaust along this pipe, which is going to meet up with the exhaust from the silica module when we build that in a moment. Same is true with the slag. There it is, slag output. That's going to come out here and similarly merge up with the output on the silica module. And the slag is going to come out here, and wow, this is looking full, huh? So what I had been thinking, and what I still might think is the most likely outcome here, is that we're going to want to do this export and then have this thing set up for a larger, higher throughput dedicated line, or some semi-dedicated line that is a double length type train rather than these shorter shuttles. But we're not set up to really receive that out here yet. We're going to get larger cargo docks and probably have to revamp this area for higher throughput in the longer run anyway. We're not there right yet to take full advantage of that. So what I think we're going to do is, for now, at least try just putting this on our landfill disposal network, because we have a few of those trains out this way just chilling, and the rock and dirt export over here from this mine, they've handled surprisingly well. So I think they've earned a shot to try it, even if I'm not super optimistic about it. So let's see how it goes. I'll throw them on the network now. There we go. So hopefully that sorts itself out. If it doesn't, no problem. We'll adjust, but let's give it a shot first. So I'll unpause and let our trucks get after it. All right, so while we're waiting for that construction to complete, one of the other things we said we wanted to work on was adding a couple farms. I don't think we need to double up quite yet, but I've added 2 right across here, simply mirrored down our center line. I've upgraded our different pipes and belts so that the throughputs match, but it's really just more of the same of what's already out here. We're going to specifically add 50% corn and 50% fruits, veggies alternating on this one. And same thing here, except soybeans instead of corn. I think those are the things that we're lowest on. Soybeans here, corn here, and always fruits and veggies. So hopefully that is a helpful attempt to dig ourselves out of that hole. If we see that all bouncing back, then we can try to reclaim a bit of unity here. I'm also going to be keeping a very sharp eye on this reservoir, which I'm pretty sure is not going to be able to sustain all of that. So I think, in fact, you know what? I'm going to even preemptively flip this around here and get a little bit of extra help going in this direction, because this one is hopefully hanging in there. Yeah, it is. Great. All right, well, we'll keep an eye on this and see how it rebalances things. As we know very well, the changes in your farming eco take quite a minute to actually flow through, and none of that will even happen until we get all of this built. And considering that we've already asked a lot of our construction network, we're probably going to take a minute to get this up and running. Why don't we make the problem even worse, though, and also build our household appliances module? So, as we said, household appliances are a new product that we can supply for additional Unity here in our settlement, and we make these from electronics 1, 2, and steel. So here I've literally just copy and pasted the 3-input, 3-assembly module that we had over here, changed the recipes and the input goods, and had it feed directly in here. I don't know, it fits. It's fine for now. I continue to have the same sort of unfinished thoughts around exactly what we're going to do here in the longer run, but I think this will work just fine for now. As we said, we need 26, and each of these is 12, so 2 is not enough, but 3 is plenty. So let's go ahead and get all of that done as well. All of these are still supplied by truck manually, right? Something to keep in mind. I think, yeah, longer run, would love to get all of, for example, the household goods and appliances put into a same dedicated factory and then, say, deliver out here directly via train. Potentially even the same thing with luxury goods. And I know we'll definitely, once we get medical goods 2 and 3, do a revamped setup for that as well. So this is not our final form, not by a long shot, but it'll do for now, and we'll take the Unity. We are actually swimming in it, which is lovely. So maybe I'll use some of it to hurry along the construction where possible. Another good use of our time while we're waiting for constructions is to check in on research. It's been a minute since we've talked ourselves through the tech tree. We are currently working on picking up microchip production. So today we're doing electronics 2, but tomorrow, maybe, we'll do electronics 3. And electronics 3 are complicated, but very good to have around, if for no other reason than they are great for making servers, which means you can make data centers. And data centers are an insanely more efficient way to make compute than basic computing's mainframe computers are. So much so that, I mean, we're going to have to probably make some of these, but I really prefer to, where possible, push them off and just go all the way through straight to data centers. They are so much better. So we should hopefully have that all set up, and even in some decent quantities, to get data centers in the not so distant future. And that will be super helpful. That will transform our manufacturing sector when we can go basically pure assembly force. So looking forward to that. Other thing I'm going to grab is Cargo Depot 3 and 4, which is the same technology. And we're going to do that sort of in advance of wanting to rework, or more, not even really rework. I think we'll keep the same contracts, but we're going to have to move some stuff around if we want to increase the scale. And I think particularly with the slag one, maybe, has me worried right now. Anyway, all of these, I think we'd like the ability to sort of scale up a bit more than this ragtag experimental build for each of these. We did not realize we were going to build an entire hydrogen-based economy around these when we first tried them out. So it'd be nice to expand and professionalize that setup as well. So nice to have this tech under our belts when we get a chance to. Beyond that, going into aluminum and the space program is probably the next grander arc of builds that we can consider. And as a reminder, we do have the opportunity to do some nuclear upgrades here whenever we want to divert and prioritize that. We're doing just fine so far. We haven't even built the second level of power out here, although it's starting to look like we could justify such a thing. We are pretty continually bouncing above 60, but we're not really perfectly staying above 60. So we're close, but not quite there on getting that upgraded further. So that's all the news that's fit to print on research, and we're making some progress out here. We'll take it. We'll take it and probably a decently sized loan. And the other thing we can do to be productive with our time while we wait for the build is get the import set up over here on St. Charles. So I've basically just taken the exact same thing we had for Electronics 1, mirrored it along here. The actual drop-off part will happen here, and there's a big looping return that merges back up with this. Call this on-ramp. No need for those two things to be separate necessarily. And then on the St. Charles side, we have the exact same sort of exit ramp here, entering into this area for the shuttles specific to St. Charles to come pick up. So again, no reason to build this until everything else is built, but it's in place. So this should be a relatively straightforward thing to spin up when it's time. Not enough workers means we must have built some new workplaces, and as you can see, our new farming expansion is complete now that that lift is done, and hopefully the crops start to spin through here and catch up. We've already gotten all of the fertilizer buffer in that we need, and it looks like we're hanging in okay here, so that's good to see. I've also added another housing upgrade. Of course, that'll be necessary to actually be able to staff all of these buildings, but I do believe, yeah, in addition to our household goods is all spun up, we are just missing some electronics too. And then we'll have household appliances as well. So coming out here to check on our electronics too, so until we start importing it, we do have access to some out here. We could boost this. We have the Unity. Probably should. That's all it really takes, so I think that'll be helpful to have in the short term here. And then the other construction to check on is our glass making, which it seems like we have all of the buildings built, but are waiting on the delivery of these various materials. And almost certainly there's some train traffic here for me to sort out. A little bit of exclusive zone nonsense later. We've got glass all the way through to it's being produced and placed into this export station. So that's excellent news. One quick note, this double-length network train is just more trouble than he's worth, so I have him set to downgrade, I guess, not upgrade, but downgrade to this same model of train that we've been using ever since experimenting with that one. The Tier 2 locomotive and just 2 cars to zip around all agilely. Probably need to add a couple more, but we're just building up the initial buffers, so I'm not going to worry about it too much quite yet. Just keeping an eye on it. The other thing we can do now is get the Silica module up and running. So let's start with the train station here, and something worth pointing out, we actually do have a bit of graphite on the network already, coming out theoretically, just if it ever gets full, but theoretically accessible coming out of the export from our scrubber station. Something tells me that probably isn't going to be enough, so we'll keep an eye on this, and if we need to supplement it with, we are already scrubbing a decent amount out on St. Charles, we can set up an import station, but let's just see how that little bit goes at first. I think we'll know whether we're eating through that buffer quickly or not. So beyond that, I'll just go ahead and get the rest of this built. Jumping ahead here real quick, I think this is right. We're going to go with 50% all the way through, which means we don't need this entire side of the silicon reactor module, and we only need these first 2 arc reactors. Save a little bit on the belts here, I suppose, but we do need to make sure that the hydrogen does come all the way through from this station module. Other than that, though, oh, and the... Is that water? I think that's water. Yep. We need this entire massive segment of pipe 4 to continue up here to deliver a net of like 3 water, something like that. So, whoops. But we're going to want this to extend up this way anyway, so I don't mind building it. Also good to keep in mind, we are delivering 2 new goods on this network for the first time. The graphite we already have flatbeds for, right, as part of the trains on our network. But even though we have hydrogen on this island and accessible already on the network, we actually haven't built any tanker wagon trains yet. So, do you think I can click from this far? Oh my gosh, nailed it. The train depot is currently working on the exact same size and shape of train, but one that can carry tanker wagons instead. So that should, let's say, on this part of the network, well, which we'll want to go ahead and add, right? So Silicon Ridge network, let's add it here. But let's say, please keep this empty with actually a pretty high priority. And then out here, as far as the network goes, I actually don't think we care. The line itself will drop off hydrogen, but this is a supply that's available, not something we actively need to push out. So it'll be there whenever it is helpful for us to access, but this will request it. So in summary, push, pull, allow. And a little while later, our first hydrogen delivery has been made, so we are just waiting on some graphite. I also think we've been sitting up over 60 megawatts long enough that it's time. Let's go ahead and build the next level of nuclear plant. Gonna wait until this is all the way built here, then we'll Unity build this and then crank this up all at once. So with the delivery of household appliances and the success of our farms allowing me to pull back on our farming boost here, we are absolutely swimming in Unity. And honestly, I cranked up the overloaded trucks edict again, but beyond that, we're really not hurting on anything else here. And so I figured, well, okay, where can we productively use this? If you'll recall, we paused half our research setup because we needed to double the throughput of these machines, something we can do when we get to assembly 4s in a moment, but we can also just do by boosting for a little while. So we're gonna do this, upgrade this and boost these so that we are able to get through research a little bit faster. Not that that's our bottleneck, but why not do it? And we're actually okay on a lot of our basic material generation. So instead, what I'm gonna do is just use it to pave everything faster. Wow, I think that just broke my computer. There we go. Wow, goodness. But yeah, so it'll be nice to get all of this paved, assuming we have the concrete. You know what else we can boost though? Concrete. We're currently boosting the entire steel factory, the entire construction parts factory, the entire of our concrete production, our research setup, bits and pieces here and there. I have never felt so rich in my entire life. I love this, and it's unsustainable, but it is helpful. Our current bottleneck is specifically parts 3. I haven't bothered boosting 4 yet because it's not even overflowing to it. We're still churning out the 3s, but I think this will help us get through it. Let's see. Yeah, it's definitely helping. We were able to finish our constructions out here, which officially means that we are producing silicon poly, and it's starting to pile up here in our export station. I think, at the risk of immediately consuming all of the parts that we've just finally started to produce again, I think that means we could at least build our drop-off stations out here. So I'm going to do that along with all of the tracks required to service them. And what the heck, why not the actual export station too? All right, a little while later, after working some kinks out of our steel system, combination of our coal supply getting a little sketchy, to be fair, along with, I didn't design this initially with the throughput of belts and pipes to, accommodate the entire thing being boosted. So we went back to our old trick of running a parallel belt here for the additional iron input, had to upgrade the limestone input throughput as well, and so on and so forth. But we are churning the steel out and sending it off, and we are, I think, finally doing a little bit better here in the construction parts factory, which is good. That's starting to trickle through here. Checking in, just sort of like how everything else is hanging out. We still, of course, don't have the parts 4 to finish this, so that's not quite up yet, but the need to have it, the fact that we've been above 60 continuously, is still true. We're just making it up at the oil power plant right now. Other things that are working pretty well. We seem to have enough graphite, at least for now. Let's see, but we're only going through 6 a minute when this thing is running at full speed, which it has been doing. And we've got ourselves some pretty decent amounts of silicon poly rolling out here, which is lovely to see. Other thing that's lovely to see is that our landfill network is actually handling all of this slag, which is great. This got quite full. I then put it up on priority 1 for disposal, and you can sort of see that it's causing some other issues in some other areas, but it's not terrible. And I think, I already added one more train, and I think I might do one additional one, and I think we'll be okay with that, at least for the short to medium term. So additionally, definitely doing great on glass, and all of its inputs are more or less backed up, and we have started even to bring some of these materials out here. There's plenty of copper, which is good to see. I'm not convinced this is enough long term. Something's going on here though. Looks like a copper supply issue. Oh yeah, these are not. Well, all right, I'll deal with the traffic in a moment. But other than that, I think we are looking good here. We should try to get the glass pushed out, and then I think we'll be in good shape once our parts finish catching up. A couple random tweaks I've done while waiting for parts to pile back up still. I added a steam refill out here for our landfill disposal network on slag specifically, just because of how far it is to send those tiny little guys out to Silicon Ridge and back. So I think that's helped. I've gotten fewer oops, train out of fuel notifications ever since. I've also spun up a hydrogen fuel station on St. Charles for the first time, because part of what I did to fix our coal throughput issues over here was upgrade to mega excavators, and their supporting dump truck upgrades are next. So I think that that'll be necessary, but has been helpful so far. Stopped boosting everything, as you can see. May have to start doing it again, but I'm mostly just cranking stuff out over here. I even grabbed, specifically, I pivoted to getting some parts 4 up and running, just because I really, really want to get this part of nuclear sorted here soon. So that should be the next thing that I have for you when I check in. Something else we should do while we wait for parts to accumulate is to acknowledge our newest channel member, Aaron Stevens. So as a thank you, Aaron receives naming rights to this bridge, and that's a pretty good draw, frankly, because this bridge connecting Silicon Ridge and St. Charles is already quite busy, and frankly, it's probably only going to get busier. So well done there. And speaking of bridges and viewers, we also have a pretty clear, if not unanimous, result in the flat bridge plus ramp versus sloped bridge approach question that I posed to everyone last time. So thank you everyone for participating. We got a good clear result, which is exactly what we were hoping for. It was good to decide this, I think, well in advance of this build out here, because, there's at least the potential that we would have needed if we went the other direction to do some pretty significant terraforming here to flatten this all out and create a smooth approach. But now that we've decided against it, I think we can put a pin in it for now and return our focus to this remaining electronics build. But I'm excited to have this locked in, and we can even, leave it here in blueprint mode. I'm looking forward to, people had some great ideas already and suggestions around how we can, decorate it and improve the aesthetics here. And I think we'll play around with some retaining walls, maybe even some trees. Yeah, we could plant trees as decoration, not just as a resource. So keep an eye on that. We'll come back to it when it is time to expand onto this island. But for now, our approach for steel is to just relentlessly boost that factory, I guess, when we need to get through it. How are we on nuclear? Very close. Very close. Back in 1 moment. And 1 moment later, here we are. So let's do it. Go ahead and build that real quick. And I think, glancing around, everything is ready to go up 1 more power level. So as a reminder, this is a commitment to running 60 megawatts of power, period, as our baseline. And as this, I'll take a second to spin up here and fill up properly. Don't worry. But once it is done, we'll have 60 going no matter what, and 60 plus whatever our solar happens to be at that moment, no matter what, which is what? Something like 7 on a good day, on a sunny day. But beyond that, we'll also run whatever we need over here at the oil power plant in order to go above 60 plus our solar. And in fact, if I remember correctly, yeah, we actually have a fraction of this already off auto balance, which means we would be consuming it compulsively unless we trim this back down. So I think we'll do that, and that should knock this back down a little bit lower, but I think we'll be okay. So I'll wait and confirm once we're all settled in here. But yeah, what's the issue there? Of course, what would it be without one small pipe creating a nuclear meltdown? That was pretty close. Nah, never a problem. Never a problem at all. Very good. So 60 at baseline coming from our nuclear plant, plus whatever we happen to have for solar, plus 1 fraction. It comes out to 15 total megawatts off auto balance out here on the oil power plant, and we can always crank this up to help us bridge that gap until we're ready to commit to 90 megawatts. So that's going to be our stepwise approach to coming up with the power that we need here. And as we build a whole bunch more manufacturers here, checking in, it looks like we do have all the goods that we need, so we should think about doing that soon. We will definitely keep increasing our power consumption. All right, maybe it's time to actually build some manufacturers. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna finish this copper module off, and that should give us a full-on 384 copper per minute, which should be enough to make all of these electronics 1. As you can see, we're hurting on the buffer right now. But once that's all done, we'll also have enough copper to make all of these PCBs. These PCBs, one of these machines does 2 of these. We're going to start small, just get things in motion, test out our throughput, and then we'll scale up from there. But this, of course, is the set of electronics 2. So this actually, it requires so much electronics 1 that we do have to split out even 2 tier 3 belts eventually, once we get these all the way up to assembly 5s. So this is built sort of with endgame technology and throughputs in mind. We just have to get there. So let's give our trucks a bit of time to do this construction. And of course, this has also meant that we need to kick up another housing to level 4. So we'll do that with high priority, and then I think refocus the construction parts factory, which is still chugging along, over to parts 3 instead of 4, because I think that's what's going to be our bottleneck. But I'll keep an eye on it. Time to sit back and watch the parts come through again. All right, another housing 4 built. We can go adopt a whole bunch of pops off the map. Yeah, not bad. We weren't max everywhere, but that was a pretty solid chunk we were able to get thanks to the big pile of Unity we have and all of that long time ago now investment in settlement reputation for just such a moment. That said, kind of don't think that's going to be enough people, is it? Have we built everything machine-wise? Pretty close, actually. Not quite. So I do think we're going to have to go one more housing. This might be slightly preemptive, but we're going to need to do it eventually anyway, so let's just do that now. Oh man, how big of a dummy am I? So I was trying to figure out why our hydrogen import wasn't working. So I was like, oh man, it was working earlier. What's going on here? We got plenty over here. I remember we added this to the network over here, and then I realized that this is a drop-off station, and stations cannot serve double duty, which is too bad. I kind of wish they could, actually. So yeah, we need to set up, obviously, an export station if we're going to provide this not just to our trucks, but to our factories via train. And we could try to squeeze it in here, but I already don't like where this is. I've been complaining about it, so I think what we're going to do is move it over here and set up a proper import station, the exact same as we did here, except with fluids instead of loose for salt. So I'm going to hop in and take care of that real quick. All right, I think this works. We're gonna continue to allow our trucks to come grab this because this is hydrogen, right? Obviously we care about that and we have that set up out here for that reason. So I think we'll go ahead and let our trucks build all of this once they have the parts for it. One other thing I was thinking about here, I was realizing this is a little bit tighter than I wanted it to be, and I could try to squeeze everything in, trim this back. I was literally counting the number of tiles that this went out to see if it would fit one of those tier 2 locomotives in the shuttle, and I was like, this is dumb. We have the space. Use it. So figured I would just extend this whole thing now before we're like 6 trains deep and it comes to a head despite my best efforts to ignore it. So we'll get this moving, and once it's up and running, we'll get the hydrogen supply train moved over to this one, and frankly probably just clear these out. I would rather not have anything this close to the tracks now. As we said, that's probably something we're gonna end up, as we continue to deal with traffic troubleshooting out this way, probably end up having to do with all of these stations. It seems to have gotten a little bit better out here, by the way, traffic-wise. I added a little bypass here, which is enough for one train. I'm not sure if that's really what helped. What I've also started doing is playing around with who has a no stop, who has right of way, and clearing out of the high traffic stations is kind of helpful. I don't know. If I'm being honest, the right answer is to say, at least for copper, just clear these out and run belts, right? Technically, that is the correct answer. And I'm just, at this point, too stubborn. I'm gonna see if there's any possible way to avoid doing that, but it still would mean we could drop off here in the future. Like, that's not an issue. The issue is the traffic going from here to here, and particularly the sand also is very high volume and going to quite a few of these other stations as well. But we've already taken quite a chunk out of this copper, and I'm sure we'll keep working on it. So that won't be a thing for forever. And out here, when we convert this all the way to scrap, there's actually nothing to do with this. So this is probably our next source of copper, which we'll have to put into a station and run across the bridge. Oh, this was me playing around with import stations, but ended up going this way because it was easier. Out here, though, we have our very first electronics 2 trickling in, which is pretty exciting. Everything seems to be supplied sufficiently, at least on this end. Of course, we're still trying to catch up on electronics 1, and until we do, I doubt we catch up on copper, right? By the way, I've added a couple more of these flatbed models to that network. You can see we have one spare here, so no worries. That's basically what I've been doing. If I notice I don't have one of a type here at the train yard, just add another. So, helpful heuristic, sort of a demand-based model. But yeah, this is great. So this is all starting to roll off the line. I'm gonna wait until the copper completely finishes out here. We're pretty close. We're pretty close. In fact, you know what? We're actually done. And that should hopefully help us catch up a bit here. We are definitely capped out here in the refinery as well. The naphtha is our big issue, but we do seem to have plenty of both for now. So that's good to see. Seems like we're essentially balanced, and if we need to handle the naphtha one way or another, we can do that too. Big concern, however, is we're pretty much done with our sand mine out here. There's nothing. The only thing that's left is the last little bits of the ramp that we were using, so I'm trying to fill in here so we can scrape this last little bit, but I think we need to basically be done using sand on Silicon Ridge in high volumes, which is not actually a problem. The timing is great, because as we said, the big bit here is in for glass, which we are now going to make this recycling only. We'll have to clean it all up, but we'll get to clean it all up. That's going to be nice. And we do need to make sure that we export some excess glass here. So we'll need to set up another one of these, or just steal one of them, I guess, and make it next time's problem to have copper in here. But on the other hand, we've been able to keep slag out. So you know what I think we'll do is probably just convert this over to glass. Yeah, there we go. That seems better. So we'll do that, and that will mean that we are good on glass out here, so no sand required there. The other place we're consuming sand is as a secondary input over here for non-recycled copper. Guess what goes away when we move to recycled copper only out here? So that's also nice and tidy. The one other spot we're using it, we've used manufactured sand everywhere in here, but there's nothing we can do about non-recycled gold scrap. And since we don't have a massive production of gold somewhere else to relegate this original facility to a recycled only one, for now at least, we will have to keep bringing in sand every once in a while, but we really don't need a ton of it. We don't go through the gold very much. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap this over to a glass export station, get the Electronics 2 export station built as well. I guess I need to, get the hydrogen supply route moved over to this station, and so on and so forth. So I've got a couple quick to-dos. Gonna hop in and take care of those real quick. Alright, so I think that's everything for export on Glass and Electronics 2, at least as far as building the stations go. I am curious. I actually think one train might be sufficient. We're going to find out. But we are going to bring in the glass. I actually snuck it in here and moved over this track set. I don't know. I think it's better to sort of squeeze it in here rather than open this side up quite yet, or extend it, or what. Still haven't decided how we're going to resolve all of this. So, punting hard questions for later, essentially. But I'm going to let these get built, keep an eye on how these stockpiles are trending, and make a call on whether or not we need to add any more throughput in certain spots. So I'll come back to you soon with an update. Alright, we're all built here and out there for glass, so I think the only thing left to do is add our stations to our various networks. Got Electronics 2 connected as well, although only glass is going to be functional right away. Hopefully, let's see. But as soon as this guy's done with another big shipment of Electronics 1, he should try to pick up glass next. I think, I don't know, do we add a second train? It's going to take a while just because there's a bunch of buffers to fill, but I do think we might end up needing a second one anyway. Let's make it. If we end up having to repurpose the parts later, I'm not too worried. We'll end up using the locomotives and the different train cars that we're using anyway. There we go. That's it on sand here. Absolutely nothing left. Took out the ramp, and we're done. We're done here. So we're gonna do a couple things. We are going to take the excavators off here and add them to, I think it's our iron mine is probably the weakest right now. It could use a little bit of reinforcing. So if we've got 3 and 6 trucks to go along with it, that's a good spot for them for now. The other thing we'll need to do then is turn this into a dumping designation. So plus 20 is where we live. I came down to get some sand down here at 19. So essentially, if we say everything up to 19 is okay with rock, then we will have the ability to come back in and fill her in on top with dirt, which who knows, we'll probably pave over anyway, but we'll have the opportunity at least. So the mine will get filled in. If we no longer have sand, we no longer need this ore sorter, right? It's attached to some other terraforming nonsense that we no longer need either. So let's clear it out. Obviously that can go too. What I'd love to do is go ahead and fully convert this to recycled only. We are going to have to make this glass actually accessible to our trucks. So I do think what we're going to need is a drop-off station, because this we could either like awkwardly set up another crossing here. Maybe that's the way to do that. Saves us a train station. So let's set up a crossing. Like so, and we'll make this one accessible. If this ends up being a train traffic crossing issue, we'll revisit it. But for now, I think that's how we're going to do it. So then with that done, I feel comfortable cleaning up all of this, really, right? So we don't need to worry about sand mix anymore, which means we don't need to worry about acid, any of its various inputs. We can repurpose all of this good stuff for other things later. We still, of course, have to worry about our various other connections. We need coal to run this no matter what. We do need to get rid of slag. And of course, we want to bring in the recycled glass. I think once this is all cleaned up, though, we'll probably find a better way to do that, if I had to guess. The other thing I'm going to do is dump this back out into our water supply because we're kind of hurting in a couple different reservoirs, mostly because of the big push I did. Boosting up a bunch of steel takes water, right? And so does a bunch of concrete, also takes a pretty good chunk of water. So we're hanging in there, but this one's hurting. This one's basically carrying the farms by itself because this one needs to recover. And my goodness, actually, I'm going to go ahead and let's just pause those. Oh my God, no maintenance 1. What's going on here? We should probably sort that out, huh? Have we just, yeah, I think we've finally gone up over, because these are all working at 100% or close enough. We just finally actually need another maintenance facility. It's wild. It's been forever since we even built our third one. We'll acknowledge I have been using, oh, by the way, the water saving edict for the reasons I just mentioned. But we've been on 25% reduction for quite some time now, so. At any rate, do we need to go up over 24? So belt 2, but this is 12 times 4. We should still be okay here. All right, very good. And this is running at half right now because I've stopped boosting these. So I guess I can pause. Okay, so we're gonna let our trucks clean up a lot of this and we'll adjust and rewire here a little bit. We're not just going to leave it like this. We'll want to pull the glass off and connect it directly. But that should be helpful. And we'll get to do the same thing over here once our electronics 2 gets dropped off. And by the way, there's our first shipment of glass. Went off without a hitch, I guess. Love to see it. Actually, I guess looking at this now, that does also mean if we're going to add more maintenance, we're going to need to add another assembly on the mechanical parts here. Thought about upgrading to our first assembly 4, but yeah, frankly, I think we just need to finish the drill here and add in one more section like this. And with that, hopefully, we should see this start to creep back up into the green. All right, so some good news. Our first Electronics 2 export shipment was just dropped off. We're not ready to actually export it quite yet, but we're starting to load the warehouse, which is a positive first step, obviously. I don't know if it's bad news, but the other thing that I'm thinking about is, yeah, I do think we are going to need to build the third electronics module already, because we've got plenty of input ingredients. These guys are all at 100%, and we're still not keeping up here. Now we're full here, and it's not like we're hurting on export, but we aren't full here either. So I think I would prefer to go ahead and build the third one here. We can always pause it later if we need to, but I think it's going to be necessary for us to feel comfortable, and we can certainly afford to do so. So let's do it. All right, I'm also tired of troubleshooting traffic out here, so I have moved these stations finally, after talking about it for quite some time, out to here. And then I'm gonna delete these, of course, and then just extend these belts. Shouldn't be too complicated, but worth doing. And as the last little bit here of the old setup goes away, you can see we have a lot more room to operate, which is hopefully going to relieve some of the congestion in this area. Some of it still just stems from we're trying to squeeze a lot of trains into a small space, so I doubt that's a panacea, but I also am willing to bet it helps a lot. And we have officially dropped off our first shipment of Electronics 2 at St. Charles from Silicon Ridge. That's pretty good, all in one episode. So let's check in real quick on our to-dos. Actually, I think we can cross off the entirety of the St. Charles to-do, right? We got our household appliances going, that's all sorted out, as is farming, with the caveat that I've been fighting some water supply stuff in the background. Pay no attention, surely it'll all be fine. So that's pretty good, I'm pleased with that. And then, yeah, so we got glass even exported to St. Charles. We are, I would say, mostly done with converting our glass to recycling only. Let's come back to that because we need to do something with our copper scrap here as well. And we got silica sorted, of course, naturally, all of our manufacturing and export also sorted. So the last thing to do is to revamp our existing copper factory to be scrap only. And while we're at it, let's polish off that on the glass front as well. So glass is easy, actually. All we're going to do is just sort of rearrange things so that this glass filter, where is it? It's on this one. This filter happens upstream, and we just send it along a belt out here directly. That's straightforward. Over here, we're going to remove all of the mining equipment. So these guys are all going to become available for terraforming, probably. Functionally is what's going to happen there. But we do have to actually absorb all of this copper scrap, and it's quite a bit, by the way. Mid-60s, typically, on the production side. And as you can see, it surges on occasion. And we actually just unlocked the better recycling edict, so I think I'm actually going to quickly make things worse. Perfect. So that's okay though, because we have the ability to process 96 copper scrap here. We'll remove this recipe and all of the stuff that goes into that. And I think we can go ahead and clean up our silica production as well. And we just want this copper, this recycled copper, to be productively absorbed. And the simplest way to do that is to just turn it into Electronics 1. We need more, and it makes 1-to-1 all the way through, but we need more than the 96 that we'll be making with this facility and its maximum capacity. We currently consume roughly 200 per minute, right? All sources. So what we'll do is we'll trim this down to only produce Electronics 1 for export, probably in this same station, and then we'll prioritize pushing that Electronics 1 out and say that this is available, not pushed out, but available supply. So it should prioritize consuming this first. So I'll hop in and yeah, delete a whole bunch of stuff here. It's gonna feel great. All right, well, it's starting to pull away already, but as we know, this will take some time to take all these materials away. One thought I guess I didn't touch on is that we are not actively producing solar anymore as a result of this change. We kind of hadn't been for a while. We were running low on sand and I didn't want to spend it. But I also just think that at this point, when we need to step up our power production, we're just going to add more nuclear, right? So what I'll do is spend down what we have, make sure that we are, putting it to good use here. But I'm pretty sure we're not going to stand up any more production. Let's go ahead and clear these guys out for now. I think we'll leave this here. Like I said, we're definitely going to end up extracting this and using it, and probably, sending it out to Silicon Ridge, but not to be produced here anymore. This will take a little bit off of our landfill disposal network, although certainly we'll have to... Actually, no. That's the other thing we get to do. We get to clear out slag. I didn't even realize that. So I'll clean this up as well. That's exciting stuff. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. So yeah, in this area, also, we've cleaned everything up. I'm simply running this filter, which is going to take everything, once it's cleared out, it's going to take everything that isn't glass that comes out of here basically and pass it through here. So glass should continue on. This also has a little bit, right? Perfect. So now everything should run again. And then whatever glass we have will continue along here. In an ideal world, and maybe when I'm feeling more like it, I'll move these over to be in line or square this all up, but we don't really need this space to be hyper efficient right now, so we're going to go for functional, just for today. Back out here though, I think what that means is once this is removed, I'm going to have this one also become a coal station, and we'll probably end up adjusting this so that it's a little bit cleaner in the future as well, but for now that is going to be good. I think we can take back these parts as well. 2 stations should be plenty for intermittent coal supply. So there we go. And then the other thing I did over here was we no longer need a copper buffer, right? So I drained that into the system here, and now we can clean that up. So yeah, just some odds and ends to export here, and this will all be looking good soon. All right, I did go ahead and double up what we were producing over here. We were starting to hurt just the tiniest bit on electronics too, and I thought, what the heck, we just freed up a whole bunch of workers and electricity, basically deleting copies of this exact same set of machines. Why not just go ahead and move them over here? So hopefully this fills up pretty quick, but everything else looks great, honestly. I think we're in a pretty good spot here. one other thing, we might want to consider would be additional acid supply, right? And there's going to be a lot of these little things that we didn't realize until we got, the balance all the way spun up. So everything's functional right now, but I don't know about taking our eye off the ball yet. So here's what I'm thinking. Next episode, right, the next thing we could build would be Electronics 3. Like, we actually have, in the same way that we could go from 1 to 2 pretty quick, we have a lot of the same infrastructure. Now, it's a more complicated build, and it's expensive, and we're gonna have to set up some more infrastructure, because I'm thinking about doing it up here, just because that seems cool. Advanced electronics up on this area, maybe with like a spaceport. Getting ahead of myself. But as much as I think it could be cool to like keep the momentum going and sprint through it, I kind of think we need next time to do a brief recovery, catch our breath, make sure everything stays in balance type of episode. Because, we have increased our population by like 50%-ish in the last 2 episodes. Things are fine. All the balls are in the air, right? Like, we're doing okay. Nothing is crashing, but we could even things out a little bit. And I've put in some work on the train traffic efforts here as well, and all sorts of stuff that just think a smaller catch our breath episode and make sure nothing goes totally off the rails while we think about and plan, but don't spend a ton of time building quite yet our next phase, which would be kind of fun. I'm looking forward to that. But let's plan to slow down and rebalance next time, retrench, recover, and then go ahead and think about the next phases. This has been an absolute blast, though. I've been really excited to see this factory come to life, and it's not even done yet, right? I mean, you can see this thing's going to be beefy as heck once everything is running at full speed. So I'm pretty excited to see it take shape. I am, as I said, enjoying myself, and if you are too, make sure to stop by again for the next one. We'll start to think about what comes next. Until then, though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.